I've got the recording going with the old software, so hopefully it doesn't crash on us now.
Good thinking.
Luckily, I was able to get my money back on that, so.
Good.
Let's see.
I lost it. Wait. I switched them, but I got confused too, so.
See, so tonight, first to start off with, just hopefully this won't take long, but the project plan.
Yeah.
Here we go. So did anyone have any issues with the project plan? We can start handing out assignments so that we're ready. It doesn't have to be all done this week, because, I mean, we got all next week, too, to plan, but it'd be nice to have it ready to go for week 11.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I got to finish all my topics.
Yeah.
Me too.
So if you can, just go in and...
Actually,
go ahead.
I've actually been doing... I know what Olan's been doing is just working on an actual project that implements a lot of them together, so...
Yeah.
After I get it working, I just need to work on like the CSS and stuff like that, so transactions and stuff like that.
Cool.
I'm going to say at least till next meeting, let's just go in and grab which ones we want. You don't have to, doesn't have to be specific, just whichever ones you guys think you'd want to tackle, just change the assignee on it to yourself, and then next week when we come together, any of the empty ones or anyone that has too much, we'll switch around, change them, and junk like that. So just whenever you get a chance.
Okay.
So who wants to start teaching first? It's me, Jan,
I can.
and Dan.
I can go first.
I don't care.
Okay.
All right. So mine's going to be a little different than what I've done over the past. It's a little bit more kind of like what I wanted to do, of more of just like what I've actually worked on, showing some of the code. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it 100% working, and I'm not sure. I'm sure it's just basically I'm missing something pointing to somewhere else. Because I'm using the object oriented method where they have like a view, a control, and a model view basically, and so I have like my JavaScript and different files and stuff like that. So I think I'm just missing something somewhere pointing to where it needs to go. But I'll show you what I have. I'll show you where it's doing what it's doing. I'm pretty sure the actual functions themselves are working. It's just getting it to display correctly on HTML. So let me go ahead and share. All right, can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so we have... So this is just, it's not pretty, but it's basic, and it's mostly done in like the back end of JavaScript. So one of my hobbies, and I don't get too much time to do it lately, unfortunately, but I paint like little miniatures and stuff like that. And so one of the things I wanted to do is create a little tracker for myself to be able to show what I have and what process I'm on of assembling and also painting them. And so you'll see the first error that I'm running into when I go add new mini. So this is part of the storage, the API storage, and I think it's just not pointing to where I have the storage correctly. So I just need to go in and find where that error is coming from. But you go in, and if you go to the console, you'll see we'll type the information in, when it was, whether it was assembled, yes, no, painted, yes, no, whatever, what status it is. And then you save, and you can see over here that it is saving it correctly. And I'll show you the back end code on that one.
Click on the application
and then when you click
part real quick. There's an application.
Click on what?
A little bit to the right.
Right here?
No, it says, so on the very top.
Oh, application,
there you
yeah.
go. Perfect. And then local storage. Yeah, I have to expand that and then click there. Okay. Okay.
Is that in Chrome or what is that in?
Yeah, this is the Chrome. Like it's I've been playing around with this to try and find where my errors are and what it's doing, and it's helped me identify a lot. Like if I can get good at really looking at this, I think I'm going to be a lot more efficient at debugging and figuring out where my errors are.
If you want to open that up, just
So is that just new page source or where? No, where are you getting that?
So I just pushed the F12, and then the console is showing what it's doing on the back end. So like when I clicked at save, it showed that the mini, whatever I had typed there, was created, and then it even shows the JavaScript code that it's referencing.
Okay.
And so he was saying go to the application here. And so what from here, Olan?
You can actually see your storage right there. The key value pair.
Okay, yeah. So that's where it's storing it. And so when I go in, I just need to find out why it's having an issue finding that local storage.
If you keep the console up, when it gets that error message, it'll show you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so,
Here, so
click on console first. Whoop. So open up, there you go, and then click on the console, and then now try to do it. So that's error in your code that's actually saying that.
yeah, so I have a basically if it doesn't do it right, I have code in there saying that it's having an error reading from the local storage. So it's not finding my local storage.
Well, if
I think that's what it is at least.
If it had a problem finding it, it would have spit it out in the console. I think your check might be wrong.
Okay. The reason I thought that it was not doing it right, that's good. I'll look at that afterwards. Is because when I go to list all minis, it doesn't find the minis that I have in here.
Now that's the message that you should. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So I have something wrong with my setup user interface. I think it's either on my JavaScript or on my front end. So
it says it's on your PHP on line 11. So. Oh, sorry, you've labeled it PHP, but it's JavaScript.
Yeah. So it's my.
Okay, well, I don't have time to troubleshoot right now.
Yeah, anyways.
But
yeah, so I'll play around with that. Anyways, so that's basically what I'm working on right now. So saving it to there, and then like you said, Olan, it actually is saving it. So even on my application, the storage here, it still has what I have there. So it is saving it correctly. I'm just not pulling it up correctly. So I have like different ones, clearing the database, create test data, and that one's not working either. But anyway, so I'll show you my code that I have to get that going. So basically I just have, my basic one here. And there's actually a website that helped me get started on this. It's called codeproject.com. And I'm a really application-based and hands-on learning. If I just see a list of how a few things that I'm able to do with it, unless that I'm actually specifically trying to use it, I have a hard time really applying things together. So that's helped me a lot with this, actually. So here we just have the links, and then on my back end, my JavaScript. This is my main one. And so for the save all, so that's the one that's going to be the one that we saw here. It's going to go to function. Just the mini strings here. It's going to go through, and we're actually using JSON to stringify the information into the array format, and then it uses on the local storage. And then here, I'll show you the code that this is the code that I'm getting, Olan, from when I'm trying to pull it up. So something here is not working, but so when I do go and save it, I have, where is it? It's in my create mini JavaScript. Nope, sorry. I'm trying to find out where I have it. Just trying to find my basic loop that I have here. Here we go. So basically, like for example, when we're loading it, to get all of the information, it's just pulling up a function, and it's pulling up the array with the keys, the mini strings, and the keys that I have are actually model, view, and in the control layer. And there I have them defined as the model. I have them defined as assembled and painted. And so with that, it goes through and there's a try one here, and it says if local storage, so it tries to find it, and then it goes through. If it doesn't find anything or it's not able to do this, it's going to get, I have it set to give an alert. And I'm not sure, the information they said just had this /n. Does anybody know what that actually does?
Carriage return.
New line.
New line.
Hey, what?
Like we used in Java. It's a new line.
Okay, so it's
like
basically,
enter. Yeah.
okay, perfect. Yep. All right, so and then it just goes to if the mini string, which is just the function that's pulling up, and this is minis, and then we're using JSON to parse it out again. And then it's just going to go through the loop each time until it doesn't find the information. Then it's going to go ahead and stop, and that's how it pulls all of the information. And that's how it goes through and pulls the code into the array format that you're looking at. But I don't have, like I said, I can't show you because something's not pulling right. So like I said, a little bit less organized as far as a presentation or anything, but I figured by now most of us should have like a basic understanding of for loops and stuff like that. But for me, the thing that I wasn't, and we even went over this in Java, object-oriented programming, the part that I didn't quite get as much until working on this part here was the local storage and how to actually pull that data back up. So once I get this up and running, I'll actually put in our folder just a little file, a folder that has all of these files, and you can kind of look and see how it works and how they're referencing to each other. Good night, Mia. I love you.
I'm not going to bed.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Any questions at all?
Can they see me?
So I'm curious. So I'm seeing here that you're creating basically attributes of that mini class and storing anonymous functions tied to those. Was there any specific reason why it was done that way?
Like this right here?
No, so you're doing mini.clearData, so you're adding an attribute to mini called clearData, and you're assigning a what they call a anonymous, because there's no name tied to it. Was there a purpose or a reason? I just want to understand the best practices on this.
So the tutorial that I went through on how to pull this, they didn't specify the reasoning behind why they actually did it this way. Let me actually go through and see if I can...
I mean, because either way, you end up calling it just like you do another function, a normal function, but I was just curious why they were naming it that way or doing it that way.
I actually think best practice for... I remember listening or reading on, like, at least on event listeners, it's typically best to actually have a specific function that you're calling because it ties up more memory, I think is what they were saying. But that was in reference to add event listeners. I don't know if that's the same with this type of a thing.
Yeah, so for
does that make sense?
Yeah, for adding event listeners, if you don't have a name to it and you ever want to remove that event, you can't do it. You have to have a named function to be able to do that, which does take up memory, takes up CPU cycles for it to watch for that event to occur. So that's why you want named functions tied to events. Because then if you want to remove them, you can.
Dan, is
Gotcha.
Is that create test data there? Is that the one that you're saying isn't working?
Well, this one is here. So the one that's not working is basically I think it's something that's universal to all of them. So this
Okay.
create test data is just one that'll basically fill in just quickly.
I just wondered because I didn't know if you spelled it that way on purpose or if it's a typo making it not work, if you're calling it, you ran the create into test. Like, you see how you did that?
I'll be right back.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Not entirely.
I thought that was actually pretty cool.
It is cool. I just don't know if you did it on purpose because if you're calling it with the whole word create, camel
Yeah.
paste and test, then it wouldn't
You wouldn't find it.
find it.
Let's see where I'm pulling it. So create test data function.
So it's,
Let me
it's
actually-
CLEA and then test data, and that's what she's saying. Did you
Yeah.
do it that way?
I mean, maybe you did. It just was popping out at me.
I noticed that too, Tiff. But
There, yeah. See, there you're calling it with the whole word of create.
Yep.
There.
So that might actually be part of it.
yeah,
You know how I like debugging, right, Dan?
Yes, I do actually.
it's called Eagle Eye.
No. PEs.
There you go.
That's it.
Okay. Now, my NetBeans is acting funny, so I actually have to do all of my inputs directly into my cPanel itself. And so I just
really?
use NetBeans to organize everything. Yeah,
Weird.
it's not uploading correctly for some reason. So it takes quite a bit longer for me to... That was under the mini.j.
To test it.
Do you have FileZilla hooked up to your?
I never
That's
used
cool.
FileZilla, actually.
Oh,
Oh, it's simple.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
super easy drag and
Even I
drop.
can understand it, Dan.
All right.
But it's good to know how to do it the way you're doing it. When in one of those when all else fails kind of.
Yeah, I
Things.
also have to sometimes use it on like multiple different computers.
Mm-hmm.
So, nope, didn't do it.
Didn't do it, huh?
So something else is still.
If you need help, I can work with you on it later.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. I don't want to take too much of everybody's time. But I appreciate that, actually. I'm sure that was actually one of the things, Tiff, that was on there. But
Yeah,
That may
you
be
probably.
on different areas.
yeah, it probably is, actually. And I doubt that's the only place that I have it or the only error. But
Yeah,
anyways, thank you, guys.
if you do a
Yep.
search, it might work.
So Jan, do you want to go next? Or you want me to go next?
Sure. I can go next.
Okay.
How many do we have doing tonight? Is it all 5 of us? Oh, except for Tiff?
Yeah, I don't have one tonight.
No, it's
So
just, it's just me and Jan left.
no, I've got tonight also.
Oh, yeah, because you had to push
Oh, yeah,
one back,
sorry.
didn't you?
Yep. You've got
Yeah, it
HTML.
was all of us except Tiff. Come on. There we go.
If we wanted one, so we have 3 next week. Instead of having 5 tonight, we could have one person push back to next week.
No, there's,
Well, we don't really want to go into week 11.
Oh, no, you're right. Because it's Mark, Jan, and...
yeah, we don't have 5 tonight. There's just 4.
okay. Never mind, you're right.
All right. Okay. Can everybody see the screen?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, this is going to be interesting. Trying to bounce back and forth, but we'll work with it.
Yeah, JSON still, like, most of the... Like, I use JSON, but I didn't understand why I was using JSON. It was just part of the tutorials that I were using. So this will be good for me.
Okay. We're going to go kind of over a bunch of different stuff at this point. HTTP, it's a hypertext transfer protocol, and it's a set of rules for transferring files back and forth between the World Wide Web. Every time that we set a URL in a search box of our browser, we're making an HTTP request. In our program assignments, we're making these requests using JavaScript, AJAX, and JSON. The AJAX is actually a method of exchanging data with a server and updating parts of a web page without having to reload the entire page. And it uses JavaScript for this. The JSON, which is a JavaScript object notation, is a lightweight data interchange format. It's easy for humans to read and write. It's easy for machines to parse and generate, and it's based on the subset of JavaScript programming language. To get started with JSON, you have a file with a title, labels, and the data. That's it. No fancy videos, photographs, audio files, nothing fancy in that. And it basically looks like one big long list. So if you were to write your own file, which is what I ended up doing for this example, you have your opening brace, then you have the object name followed by a colon. Please make sure that all of your strings are in quotes. Then you have a bracket for an array. If you don't have an array, don't use the bracket. There's another brace indicating a new element. You have the labels followed by a colon, followed by the data that goes with it. So in my first line, you've got name is the label, there's the colon, and Clifford is the data. And you do that with all of the lines. Something to remember, strings are in quotes, but numbers and booleans, true or false, are not. And each element is followed by a comma. You also have commas between array elements as well. And then once you're done with all of your data, you just put a closing brace, just like you would with JavaScript. The other thing is you wouldn't normally see it like this. You'll see it in one big long line across the page until it can't go any further. But this makes it easier to read. To access the JSON, we need an HTML file. I chose a simple format asking for information and printing it below the input box. Pretty straightforward. The input line has an ID to be called later and an onChange attribute so that when the number in the box changes, it executes the function below. The div char is where the information will get put. And this is what it's actually going to end up looking like. So you select a number between 0 and 3, and below that will print the information out of the data. And I'll show it to you in just a moment. In the script tag, we set up the functions. For this part of the example, I have the JSON information right there in the script tag. So if it were a separate file, it would start from this colon, right, this brace right here. But because it's inside the script tag, I identified the variable, put the JSON parse, the parentheses, and then put the JSON in between it. The function underneath it, the characters, of course, is what is called by the onChange input tag. The parse int takes the value of the input tag and changes it to an integer. And then the sample array has only 4 elements, so the if-else statement compares the entry of the elements. If it's not between 0 and 3, it prints try again. And assuming all of this goes well, it moves down to the else portion. The first variable is the name of the object. I missed something here. Okay, no, I didn't. All right, the first variable is the name of the object, along with the name of the JSON file. So the object is, we're basically taking all the JSON information and moving it into this object that I've called JObject. Character is the name of the file, and characters I would be the array in particular that we're looking for. And then it's just redefining each label in that variable to a new variable within the JavaScript.
Just FYI, that was character is the actual parsed JSON from your string. So it's not referencing the file.
Say it again, Olan, I missed that.
Your character object there, that's referencing the parsed JSON, which has which had an element called characters, and then it had multiple elements or array. It had an array of multiple elements below it. So what you're doing is you're pulling one of those elements in that array out and putting it in that J object.
Okay. And then down below is the inner HTML to print the whole thing out. And this is what it'll end up looking like. So if I put the number 2 in there, it brings up that information. Everybody with me so far?
Is that really a name? I'm just curious.
Zool?
Yeah.
Yes, actually, that's a character in a story I wrote for my son.
Okay.
No. Zool likes to go boom.
Nice.
Okay, so accessing the data when it's not in your file. Anytime the data is not in your immediate file, you will need to execute an HTTP request to get it, even if it's in the same directory. To start this, we start just like before. That look familiar? I changed the input type, I changed the onChange function, and I changed the div ID number. That's it. From here, the function starts naming at the beginning. To start, we create an instance of an XMLHTTP request. For this one, I have the X object is the new HTTP request. From here, you've got to set up what's going to happen to the data it brings in before you actually bring in the data. It's kind of like a marble track. You would build the track before you let the marbles loose. So onReadyStateChange is an AJAX attribute that stores the function that will process the data from the server. And it's hooking up that part there. I'm going a little fast here, so. We next need to be certain that the server is ready. We compare the ready state and the status to the server before we begin. Ready state should default at 4. However, there are other options depending on where you want to stop along the way. The status code should be set at 200. There are a lot of codes for status. And I've got a website for you later where you can go and see what they all are. But the number 200 means that everything is okay, proceed. After that, we're going to define a variable and parse the data from the JSON file into the variable. The response text is the data that's being sent to us. The next couple of lines should look familiar. It's exactly what I had before. Only with a difference in ID and div names. And we go back to checking the data from the input file. From here, it's the same procedure as we did before, and we just define different variables using the object and the labels. The 3 brackets at the bottom, you close from the else attribute, we close the ready state and status from the if attribute, and then we close the onReadyStateChange function. But we're not done. We've got it all set up, and now how do we get it in? This is where our open attribute comes in. To actually get the information from the other server, we set the open function into play. XObject is the variable we've defined for our XTTP instance. The open function is part of AJAX and initiates the communication between the servers. Get is the method used to transfer the data. It is faster than the post option. And I've got little notes down below explaining all that. The true Boolean indicates that it's an asynchronous connection. An asynchronous one is faster than a synchronous one. It simply means it's going in one direction first and then coming back. They're not trying to do both at the same time. The URL in between those two, which is right here, is the URL to the site where the data is stored and must be complete. You can obtain the URL from the site where you get your API information back when we're setting this up. The send method function actually sends the request to the other server. And then you have the end of the entire function there. So the final display for this, because I have monster set up in a different file, again, I put in a number 1 and it prints out just like it did before. But it was a lot more complicated to get it out there. And there's my resources. The status codes are at this, I lost it. That second one. The way to go back. There. Yeah, where it says status codes here, that's the website that I found a whole list of all the codes and what they mean. Any questions? That's all I've got.
Cool. Mark, do you want to go next? You want me to go next, or?
It doesn't really matter to me. It's up to you. Whatever you prefer.
All right. I'll just go ahead and get it over with. So tonight I'm going to be talking about JavaScript events. So events are whenever a user interacts with any item on the page. Everything has an event tied to it. It also happens when you have an event happen from the system, when errors happen, when you access storage, or when loads or unloads of a page occur. Now, to define an event, you need to know, or you need to do 3 things. First, you need to define what element am I targeting to watch for an event. You have to do that first because that's what you're going to watch to check for an event. Now, the second one that you want to do is, okay, now that I'm watching that element, what event am I looking for? Am I looking for a hover? Am I looking for a click? Or am I looking for a scroll? Those are things you look for. And then finally, you need to state what code you want to execute upon that event occurring. So there are 3 ways to bind events. I'm going to start off with that number 3 is best practice, but there are the other 2 ways, and I'm going to give you history behind them. So the first one was the HTML event handlers. That was built in the initial portion of HTML and JavaScript interacting with each other back in the 90s. So that is definitely a legacy method of doing this. One of the downsides to using this is that you can only define one on-click or one type of event for each of these items. So if you needed another action to occur for the on-click, you'd have to find some way to tie those 2 functions into one and then call that one function. Traditional DOM event handlers were the next step up. It allowed you to split up your JavaScript and your HTML. So when you wanted to make structural changes to your page, you went to your HTML. When you wanted to make action item changes to your web page, you go to your JavaScript file. but it had the same problem that you could only tie one event to or one action to a single event. And finally, this is what our preferred method is. It is the add event listener. This way you can define the exact same stuff that happened before, but now you can tie multiple events to the same action to the same item. It still allows you to keep the JavaScript separate from the HTML, but this is the way you want to do it. Plus, you can also remove the event if you want to. So in my application, I removed events whenever the form wasn't complete. So if someone changed their mind on like item number 2 in the list, I could reset the bottom half of the form, remove the event for the click on the button, so that way they couldn't click it to submit a half empty or a half filled out form. But that's one of the benefits of using a level 2 event listener. So one of the key things about events is the event flow. There are 2 methods. There's called event bubbling and event capturing. The reason why we need to know this is specifically for event delegation. I'm going to show an option for that, because as you add events to your page, that adds more and more resources that your computer has to watch for an event to happen. So imagine you're having to add an eye to your body for every item you're watching, and by the time, let's say you add 10 or 12, now you got 10 or 12 eyes, you've actually got to sit there and control and watch these little things. So it takes a lot of resources. So doing event delegation is key, and understanding the event bubbling and capturing is critical. I couldn't really show a better diagram to show you what the difference is between event bubbling and event capturing. So what I decided to do was just take a picture, because the scans weren't working that well, but I took a picture of the page from Duckett's book here. Now, event bubbling, it starts where the event occurs. This is your default action. This is the way it's going to happen most of the time. And this is the way majority of times you're going to want to do it, because what you can do is you can tie one event listener, let's say, to the UL item here. And let's say you have a lot of these these anchor elements below in your UL. Well, what can happen is you just tie one event listener to the UL list, and every single item that's clicked will then bubble up to the UL. So now you've only got one eyeball watching one thing, but it can watch a huge list of items. So you're saving on resources, making your page more responsive, making it much more resource friendly on your PC or on your users. So that's key to why these are the way you want to do things. Now, I don't have a specific reason why you would use event capturing, because it was so rare. Most of the time, it's going to be used with event bubbling, and that is why it's the default action. They actually didn't even give any good reason to use event capturing, and they said it would actually have to be due to your thought process and how you did the code, because the majority of people use event bubbling. So, but it's the flow of events, and you need to know that there's a difference between one versus the other.
Question.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be easier to troubleshoot going through the bubbling?
In a way, because you can watch the event from one object and then see it come from another, and then you could see which item or which child kicked off that event. So in a way, yeah, you could say it's a little bit easier to troubleshoot. The main reason for doing it this way is for resource management. So that was the actual key thing that Duckett hit multiple times. This is for resource management. You don't want to, because if they're on a phone, doesn't have lots of resources compared to like a PC, you want to just have a couple of events watching versus a million. So another thing I wanted to catch on is event objects. So just like we created objects for whatever our things were, from characters or monsters from our previous example from Jan, there are event objects, and I'm actually going to debug some code for you guys so I can show you how awesome those event objects are. They have a plethora of information tied inside of them that you can, if you know what an event object has inside of it, you can now build upon that. You can learn, hey, whenever that event occurs, it has these attributes that I can watch and have certain things happen based off of that. Just some of the key things from those event objects that you can look at is you can look at mouse events. You can tell what button was clicked on the mouse. I think it even went up to like 10 mouse buttons. There's some crazy mouses out there, so I'll just let you know there are 10 mouse buttons. I think that's actually limiting, so I've seen some crazy ones out there. But either way, you can also tell where it was on the screen when the event clicked and also when the event ended. So you can have a start click and an end click. You can also have keyboard events, so you can do the which method, which will, not the which method, it's the which attribute that will tell you what key was pressed, and you can also do the shift key attribute to see if the shift key was pressed. There are also wheel events. The wheel is talking about the mouse wheel, so you can tell if it went on the x-axis, the y-axis, or the z-axis, and how many times. Okay, so I already talked about event delegation. I'm not going to go over it again. It's all about resource management, looking at one element versus the total of the children. So it's basically think about it like a daycare. You have a parent watching, or a worker watching 10 kids. The more, you can ask that parent, what's the status of those kids, and they should know. So anytime a problem happens or something occurs, they come to that person and ask for whatever, go to the bathroom or whatever. So that's the benefit of having that, rather than having a parent watch every single kid at that time. Some other key things that I actually had to use in my code whenever I would have the button clicked, I would have to tell it first to stop the propagation of the event, because sometimes every time the event would propagate to all my other actions that were up above it. So whenever that button was clicked, it would also close my form on me, and it would also submit another function that I had in the background. So I had to tell it to stop the event flow. So when I'm talking about event flow, I'm talking about that bubbling and that capturing. So if you have this stop propagation, it stops the bubble from happening right there. And prevent default is like what it states. So if when you click a button, it's inside a form, that means it submits the form. You can tell it, don't do that. Let's do something different. Google Docs actually uses this heavily. So when you right click on a Google Doc, normally inside it's supposed to give you a menu from the actual browser, but Google tells it, don't do the default, send them this, and it gives you an actual menu inside one of their sheets or one of the docs that you can interact with the document rather than have it do the default option. Now, if you want it to do both at the end of your function, just have it return false, and it'll stop both from occurring. Referencing, you guys can look at that later. So really quick, I wanted to show, I want to stop sharing. So within my application, let's think of an event to watch. Holy, come on. Trying to get the console to come out. This takes forever. So let's debug some code in here. So for any time I actually click one of these items in the garage, let's debug that. Change vehicle. So let's see here.
Sorry, I missed most of that. My computer crapped out on me. I had to restart it.
Oh, okay. Well, luckily the recording hasn't crapped out yet, so you can always watch that later.
Watch it again. Yeah. Good.
So I just set a debug within Chrome. So whenever I run this and it hits that line in my JavaScript, it'll stop and I can watch specific variables. Ugh. Sorry, I didn't clean up from the last time I was debugging. So let's add a watch expression for my event attribute, which is E. And let's go ahead and click on an object. So I've hit that parse. So it's on the debugger that it's stopped. And notice now I have an event here. So this is awesome. I love this ability to be able to stop my parsing and actually look at the element itself. Now, first off, this is not the entire list of what an event object has. If you want to see even more, underneath target, there is a ton of information that you can see what happened. So during that time, let's see, so this bubbled up to the UL item in my list. And where was it? Has, notice here's all the attributes on the event that it came from. I clicked on the Silverado there, so it knows the text that it was on. It also knows what the next sibling is. It knows what the node type was. Node name is basically, it's a P element. That's what I have for this one. It knows where it got clicked on within the screen. These are a ton of events that are tied to it, and I don't have any set because, again, this list could get huge, so that's why I used event delegation, so I could have one single event watching for anything that was ever added. It knows the parent node, which is this guy here. I mean, this goes on and on. It also has the style of what was currently set for it, which is another really long list of all the different CSS attributes that you can tie to an element. I mean, if you guys ever want to know anything about that event, you can tie it to this and look in the debugger and figure out what's going on. So that is what an event object is, and it's key to understand it, because if you're going to use events in the future, this is a great way to figure out how can I use events in the past. So now to the event delegation. Okay. So within my update garage list, which builds this actual list here, at the very end, I add the event listener of click for change vehicle, not to each element, but to the garage list, which if you look at my HTML here, right now it's just an empty div at the beginning, but it targets that, adds an event to it, and then whenever that event kicks off, it hands off. That's why I needed the event object handed to it. So whenever it gets called, it calls that change vehicle function, and notice it has E as its receiving attribute or its receiving variable. I needed to have that because within that, I can then get the actual index of that object, and then I can end up getting storage, figuring, well, I had to get the list from storage so I can send it the specific vehicle and item and model year IDs and other stuff that are set in other forms. But then I can actually set that element's CSS class to selected. So that's how we pull off that here and set it on its way again. So each time I click, it'll change the item in the list. And other things it does whenever I click on that is it'll change the actual name of, or the actual title, I should say, of each of these panels that I have. So it has the title of that truck. Let's say I go back and I want to do work on the Odyssey. Now I can go to the record. Now it's dynamic. Now it has this record. And now the next maintenance is here. And 70,000 miles, I need to do so-and-so item. So that's event delegation. I don't have to watch every single list in this, or every single item in this list. I just watch the entire div that contains these guys. And the events bubble up. Any questions?
No.
That would take me a little bit of time to kind of really look over and figure out.
Yeah, it's definitely not something. I've been working on the event delegation stuff for the past 3 weeks since I started building this app. Because
Yeah.
I'll actually show you a bad example of how I did this originally. I didn't use event delegation on the first one, and so I tied an event to each one in my topic example for, I think I listed it in a couple. So the contact list here, see if it's in here. Hold on a second. I like to show a bad example because then you can tell the difference between why it was such a pain in the rear to do it one way versus another. Actually, crap. I'm gonna have to go to my website. Hold on a second. Pull this up and I can show you off of there. Oh my goodness. Sorry. When I record and presenting and all this other stuff, it gets really bogged down.
Should be good.
Okay. That was topic 3. Okay. Go to the bottom where my actual JavaScript is. So, it's been a while since I've looked at this list. Delete contact. So I tie that delete contact here.
This is why you label them all.
There it is. So this is another bad thing I do is I do the event, the old style on-click crap. So inside here, the reason I remember this now. So the reason why I had to do it this way, I'm actually replacing the inner HTML because I couldn't get these stupid events to tie correctly. And that's why here I actually run this function, and I give it a count. I actually have to, as I'm rebuilding this list every single time, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So whenever it does the delete contact, it sends the count or that index number of the person on the list, and then it goes and deletes it. Where if I had a bit delegation tied to the table itself rather than each element, I could tie one event to the entire thing. But here that grows with the list as it gets bigger. So right now I've got 3 events watching here. So this list could get huge and eat up a ton of resources, which is not, that's a bad waste of resources to watch it that way. So
That's interesting.
That's a bad way to do it. And that's why you use event bubbling and the delegation, because now I can just do one, and no matter how large this list gets, I am not going to run out of resources because I'm only using one event listener for the entire thing.
Nice.
Which is what this guy does. So.
Okay.
Cool. Mark, you ready?
That's good.
Nice.
Very nice. That's it, Olan?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, fortunately, my subject tonight is pretty short and easy. You can make it as long as you want to, but the topic's pretty easy itself. Let me share my screen. There we go. Okay. So my topic's on HTML5 tags, which are pretty simple in itself, to work with. I was curious what all the tags were in particular because, I never really associated them together. So, I brought up, the W3 schools to look and see. And it gives all the tags right here. So every HTML tag is set up here. The nice thing about this list that I really liked is it shows the actual, what is HTML, the 5 tags only. And so you can go with the 4s or whatever you want to, but these are the HTML5s that you can specifically look at. And it generates about, I think there's about 25 or 6 of them that are based on HTML5 in particular. And so that was it's a nice list that I liked looking at to help me understand, which ones to really look at. The title of the topic is Video, Audio, Canvas, etc. And I'm not going to do 26 different HTML5 tags, I promise. I'm only going to do the 3 right here to make it simple and easy. So when I look at the various tags, video and sound are pretty simple, as we all know. You look at, that's what I've got up right here. I left the code up very quickly, but you're really just setting the base of how you want those to look on your screen. And by setting the video, you're using the video tag in particular, which is right here, versus the iframe. Was it iframe that we used to use to do video? I think it was iframe.
That or embed.
Yeah, or embed. So those are the old methods, but now they're looking at, you've got the video and then you have the audio tags instead. And so you can set them up to do a variety of things. The nice thing about video is you can list out the multiple different types of extensions, MP4, whether it's the WebM or anything of that like that. All the other different extensions that can be utilized for video, you can list them all out here in case the browser in particular doesn't use one of those formats. It'll grab one of them. So you can set that up in that way. When it comes to audio, pretty simplistic. You're looking for the source, and you can do a different type of audio tags the same way as video. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I think when it comes to setting up or embedding video in there, it's pretty simple. You can do it that way. Set it up. I can expand it. One thing, when you set the controls right here, it'll give you the controls automatically instead of putting them in yourself, which you can do if you want to. And the same thing with audio in particular. So if I want to set up audio and so forth, or I can expand that out and it'll take up my whole screen. It's dynamic, with the screen itself. So video was pretty simple, to go through. I think we've all done this a gazillion times with our websites to a degree. So, I'm not going to go over that too much more. On that, unless anybody has questions about video and audio in particular. Anything? Okay. I'm going to move on. I thought Canvas was more interesting, to be honest. When you
that's kind of what interested me.
What's that?
That's kind of what interested me when I was doing this topic.
Yeah. And
Canvas was pretty good.
Yeah, Canvas was kind of fun. The other thing that I should note, I did make the the Canvas reference right here. So here's the various references for lines and rectangles and paths and all that kind of stuff. I created that little on my site so I could access that whenever I needed to. But when it comes to Canvas, this is pretty simplistic right here. What was interesting is, here, let me pull the code up right here. Canvas, I didn't really quite know what it was talking about at first when I started looking at Canvas, but it was pretty straightforward once I started researching it and looking on the web and reading some articles and different things like that. Canvas itself, within this one document or this one particular page, you can put as many Canvas tags on a page as you want to. As you can see, I put 3 of them on there just for fun. You can change the sizes of them. You can set up the different IDs so that you can choose whatever canvas that you want on a page. And there's different things that you can create. I mean, a variety of stuff. And I think some of you guys have already demonstrated this in our training, so I don't need to go through all those. But these are just a few that I set up. You can change the parameters, the sizes, the shapes, anything you want to do. It's kind of fun. One of the things that I just played with was even on my nav page, I put that up there, so anytime I go to anything outside of that, it's always in my nav. And so basically you can put Canvas tags pretty much anywhere on any of your pages. The nice thing about putting that in my nav is if I change it once, it changes every single page throughout my website, that has nav in it. And so when I look at this particular, that's where, that's where my nav is right there within on that module. And so I put it inside that file there, and that's what shows up. And that wasn't there last week, when I demoed this. And so from a Canvas perspective, that's really kind of what I started seeing, is being able to change the views and so forth, and play around with these. But more importantly, Canvas, what I come to find out, is really, really powerful. I mean, you can create pretty much anything in Canvas. You can draw on it. You can, create games. You can do whatever you need to. And that's where I created that that little right here. I found this out there. I thought it was kind of interesting, but these are Canvas designs that people have done. And so it gives you more of a scope on what Canvas can really be, instead of going from the, let me go to this right here. Instead of going from there, you're going to there. So if I click on that, it's pretty impressive, right? Here, let me turn the sound off. This is the site. I mean, if you look at what's going on, all the elements that are created within this canvas, if I go on here, it's showing you where exactly these colors are showing up in this particular canvas setup. And so it's really quite impressive how they were able to design various elements and colors and so forth and create one canvas for this page. And then you can go on. There's so many different designs on here. Everything from, even here, I think I've got one still open. If I do something like Missile Fleet, I looked at this, I thought it was kind of
I saw Missile Fleet earlier. That one's fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
I think about, what HTML5 can do with Canvas, and it gets pretty phenomenal. And I think one guy, I looked at one design, and he said, "Look, Ma, no Flash," or something like that. And so that's, I think, really what I wanted to just kind of get across is the fact that you can set these up a variety of ways. You can set up pictures. You can, you can create buttons to activate things through JavaScript to a lot of degrees. You can gradient things, but for the most part, you're going to see that you're setting up a get, element by ID so that you can grab what you need to for size. You can see in each of these green areas within NetBeans, it's kind of nice because it shows where the JavaScript is. And so those are the sections in which, you saw on my screen, the gradient, the circle, etc. And so I started to, down here, I started to do the one with the pictures, but I didn't quite have enough time to finish it. I got it to work to a degree, but I couldn't get it small enough so I can actually click on buttons and make it move. But that kind of gives you an idea of what Canvas does. I think, for the most part, that's really all I need to show on that, unless somebody has questions on it or has a different insight. But what I found is that it's pretty simple to set these up. You can tag multiple Canvas tags within documents. Pretty much place them anywhere you need to. And as you can see right here on this little example, you can get pretty elaborate in any way that you want to. So to get to this level, I would have to find out what's going on. But what's interesting is you notice that you're seeing a lot of movement within these colors down here. That obviously they're running loops and so forth to keep that movement going so that it's showing a movement through different varying colors, which is pretty creative, the way they're doing that. And then on their deal here, you can speed that up, you can slow it down. So they've created the buttons for you to be able to utilize whatever you need to through the way they programmed it. So that's really all I have on Canvas and the HTML5. There's a whole bunch of tags, but I didn't do them all.
No, that's great.
Cool.
So,
Appreciate it.
Told you it'd be short and sweet.
So for the next couple days, you want us to go through and kind of see what we want to do for the presentation, just to kind of recap on that. Not the presentation, but the project.
Yeah, just pull out things that you want to do, and then whatever things aren't selected next week, we'll kind of get. I need to get a count of how many items there are. Granted, I can't really go off of number because some of these are much larger than others.
Yeah.
But yeah. And that's actually one of the advantages of us having the chat going, is because it'd be like, hey, I'm getting swamped. I took more than I thought I should have, or I think I should have. And so you can always ask for help from somebody else, because there's no telling, somebody might be twiddling their thumbs.
Do we have an idea, Olan, of what each of those, the scope of each of those are? You know, or is it just kind of going to be hit and miss and trying to figure out, once we get into it, we're going to realize, oh, it's a lot of work or a little bit of work?
So
any kind of idea?
It'll be a lot of work.
Let me present.
No, I know it's going to be a lot of work.
So basically, if I don't know how many of you are going through CIT 230 or have been, but basically all
Going
this,
through it now.
Cool. All this is here, minus the UI planning, is your site plan from CIT 230.
Yep.
So if you need a reference, you can just go to my page. If you need where my page is, it's in the contact spreadsheet in our drive. But at the very bottom, there's a site plan. And that's basically what we're going to build so that we can understand, okay, what would we target this to? What do we need it to accomplish? What do we need? I think in the sitemap, since we're not doing more pages than just one, what we might end up doing for this is more of a, that's part of that UI planning, where we can talk about, okay, to do this, we need this type of function. So whoever does the UI planning would be the one that would know or get all the information from the previous steps and say, okay, how do we break this down to do that? Now, that might not just be one person. That might be all of us coming together in a special meeting, maybe end of week next week.
That might be a good idea.
Yeah, that one would probably be good for all of us to do.
Because that's kind of the logic planning, right? Like the logic behind it. Okay.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of pieces that we all will need to really understand that to make happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll take the UI planning, and then next week, whenever we come together, I'll present what I have, and then we can make changes as necessary. But that's basically what that's going to be. And then a lot of this, like, again, the style guides, it's just trying to make it look pretty. It shouldn't really be, I mean, literally, whenever I do cite these style guides, what I do is I just pick the logo first, and then I drop my logo in a color palette thing online, and it gives me a palette, and I'm done. And literally within 5 minutes, I'm done. Just going through and do all this. Now, this is the one thing I think we might end up using a lot more of, is the actual wireframes or the responsive sketches, so that we know kind of what it needs to look like. So our app looks like this. And again, this is exactly what we want. Not anything, just a box that says, hey, this is where the logo would go. This is where our navigation would go. This is where the list of, or the form would be for searching for a type or a category of food. I don't know. What do you call that? I'm looking for Asian today, or I'm looking for hamburgers today, or whatever. I don't know what that's called. But this is what I feel hungry for today. That's where this form would be. So.
Well, I think that's the key, though, is we need to, I mean, I haven't looked at this close enough to understand what all of the things need to go into the page and the site itself. And so whether we have forms, whether we have buttons, you know, those kinds of things that interact,
yeah,
that would be good to know, so that that could be created on that wireframe.
Yeah. So that is basically week one. It is just building out a site plan, what we want our UI, the whole Java, all the functions. That's a lot of work, but if we do this week right,
I saw that tip.
then that's what
Did you now?
So. Now, for some of these, like here in the JavaScript one, I put placeholders for this. Because again, until we get the UI planning done, can't really make what functions need to be there. So this will grow as we go on. So same with the testing. It's on the testing page as well to make sure that, well, maybe I pulled it. I had it at one point. But that's why these are called function 1, 2, 3. I just wanted placeholders. But yeah, so that's where we'll hit the road running. And actually, this is all of next week's work because we don't really have to do any more topics to be able to do this. So picking out the color scheme and the use cases, those are very simple. So those done.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, anything for Mark.
Well, he can take one of mine if he
All right.
wants.
What's that? Yeah,
This isn't final.
You didn't have anything. I just took the rest, but
I haven't even brought it up on my screen yet.
yeah,
You guys have filled out already. Oh my gosh.
you can just take some of mine. There were a bunch of empty ones. I'm like, yeah, it's not a big deal. It won't take that long. So.
Wow.
Okay, well, I haven't really just even thought about what I'm going to put in. I just marked a couple.
Yeah.
So I'll go through and put my name in.
Again,
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
see ya.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Hi.
All right. See ya.